Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? The next panel discussion, Collaboration for Nature and People, a blockchain pilot case sharing, will now begin. May I invite all delegates to be seated. Please remember to keep all mobile devices on silence mode and video recording is prohibited during the section. Thank you for your attention. Thank you again for returning for the final section of the day, Panel Discussion Collaboration for Nature and People, a blockchain pilot case sharing. This section is live streaming on Faction Submit website and Facebook page. To begin, may I invite our moderator and our speakers to come on stage for the panel discussion. Our moderator of this section is Ms. Karen Ho, Head of Corporate and Community Sustainability, WWF-Hong Kong. And our speakers for the section include Mr. Amit Gautam, CEO and founder of TextileGenesis, Ms. Jennifer Tam, Business Development Director of Chickslifestyle, and Mr. Harold Weghorst, VP of Global Branding of Lenzing Group. Ms. Ho and all speakers, please.
Good afternoon. Before we start, probably I need to introduce my speakers. I'm not going to introduce you, Jennifer. But I want to invite you to introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about your company and then talk a little bit about, because our panel is talking about blockchain as a very sexy word. Tell us what you know about blockchain and why you are interested in pilot this technology.
Okay, yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer from Chicks. So Chicks is a very renowned brand in Hong Kong. We've been around for 66 years. So throughout the years, we are really interested in the supply chain. And then we really look into every part of our supply chain, from material to our spinners to everything. So with the blockchain, I see it as Lego blocks. So we build it as a foundation. So with all the Lego blocks, each of our suppliers are like Legos. So when we build them together, we can add different things to it. Like previously, I really want to introduce the carbon emission part to our company. Like how do we reduce that? But like how do I track the whole supply chain? How do I know how much they are using or are they improving? It's really hard. But with this platform, it actually helps and makes things easier. The start of it, I won't lie, it's not easy because every party will need to get involved. But once the whole platform is done, it's actually really just like Lego. And it's just our company culture of really wanted to the sustainability and the education part. So with this opportunity, we are really happy that we can be part of the pilot project. Yeah.
Harold?
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Harold Weghorst. I'm Global VP of Branding within Lenzing. Lenzing is one of the leading fiber manufacturers of cellulose fiber globally. And we are known for brands like Tencel. Tencel is one of our key brands in premium fibers for lyocell and modal, as well as Ecovero, which is a premium brand in viscose. Lenzing as a group is very much dedicated to sustainability, and we are really driven to make a change in the industry and make sure that the industry gets more sustainable, because I think that's a goal that we all need to achieve. That's not just us, but I think that's something collective. And within sustainability, I think one of the key topics is transparency. And this transparency does not exist today. If you think about it, that the textile industry at large is an industry which it's about $2.4 trillion globally, is one of the biggest industries globally. But if you look how fragmented and how intransparent it is today, I think there's a big job ahead of us. And in that context, it's also very interesting for us to look at this new technology of blockchain and work with TextileGenesis as a key business partner, as well as with Chicks and WWF and Chicks value chain partners, to see how we can pull this off and create more transparency in the value chain. And for us, blockchain is an enabler. And I know it sounds big and even say sexy, but in the end, yeah, you call it Lego. It is like that. For me, it's really an enabler, and it really allows us to exchange data from A to B to C to D in a very safe and reliable and automated way. And I think that's where the value is. And yeah, we are very keen to embark on this project. For us, we have multiple initiatives on transparency, but this is definitely a key one, and I'm very excited about it. And yeah, with that, I would like to hand over to Amit, who can tell us much more about that.
So, myself, Amit Gautam, CEO and founder of TextileGenesis. And I think I just came to know I work in a sexy Lego industry now, right? It's combining this interesting, and I think that more or less captures what blockchain industry is about, because for some, it's quite sexy, and for someone, it's quite fundamental, like Lego, right? So there's quite a big differences in opinion in the market of what exactly it is. We actually see ourselves more as a digital transparency platform where we use blockchain as one of the enablers, plus more advanced digital technologies. But it doesn't have to be blockchain. It's an important building block versus other advanced digital technologies we use. See, the challenge in the fashion industry is very clear. If you look at the top 100 brands, majority of them have announced 100% sustainable fibers target. But what is interesting, this is an industry where less than 5% of those top 250 brands can identify their garments back to the origin of fibers. And then you scratch your head, if you sell something, you don't even know where the raw material is coming from because you can't trace it back to the supplier. How can you even commit to a 100% sustainable fibers target? But that's where we are. A lot of brands have taken very strong initiative. And what we plan to do is actually bridge that gap to make that a reality, that brands and apparel brands and the fiber producers could say, yes, we have achieved the target because they can trace it back. So that's more or less the industry challenge and the business challenge we solve. And to use the Lego analogy, because very difficult to use a sexy analogy, but okay, to use the Lego analogy, once the backbone is there, you can add on a lot of interesting dimensions to the garment, things around environmental sustainability factors, things around certificates. You can eliminate a lot of PDF files that are flying around in the system. So there's a lot more one can do once the basic chain is there. So I'm really excited to be here. So Karen, thanks for inviting, and we have partnership with Lenzing, and Chicks, thanks for your leadership in actually doing that very fast, what I would call a successful pilot in the apparel industry, and we will share the results jointly together of what we did. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm Karen from WWF. You probably wonder why WWF is involved in blockchain. The whole reason is we care a lot about the environment. We care about how businesses is using the natural resources, because we are always saying that we are running out of resources, and then we don't want businesses or public to pollute the environment. So we see blockchain as an enabler, yet an opportunity that we can really improve the traceability as well as the transparency. Actually, this topic is not new to WWF. We ran a panel last year, also talking about enablers that's involving financing as well as blockchain technologies. And this year, actually, we take it to a next step, which is we take from the concept node stage to a proof of concept. And that's why we have this pilot partners here with the brands Chicks. And of course, she has her suppliers joining the pilot. Otherwise, we can't have this pilot completed. And very important, we have Amit, the platform provider, who helped us out in the whole process. And of course, Lenzing is the very important part because you're the fiber producer, suppliers, and then it's all the fiber coins That's originate from your source.
Yeah,
So
the big spenders.
So we have all the participants here, and then later on we'll have a very fruitful discussions. And then if you have any questions in mind, you can, I guess later on we will have a QR code for you to key in your questions. But before we really jump into the discussions, I want to give you a short presentations regarding how this pilot goes, as well as we also run the consumer survey. Because right now we have these industry people working on their own things, but we also want to understand from consumer side. Do consumers really want to understand such a transparent supply chain? If they say yes, what sort of information they would like to receive? How would they like the information be displayed? So with these questions, we conducted a consumer survey, and then the PowerPoint I'm going to present is actually to inform you the result of this survey, so that, again, you'll get a feel on how the Hong Kong consumers thinking of the use of blockchain. I don't need to explain this chart because it's actually a diagram of the supply chain. Harold's already mentioned that it's a very complex supply chain. You can see each little boxes is actually an actor along across the supply chain. And what we happen to see is the industry are talking about they want to improve transparency and traceabilities. Normally, the brand side, they could only trace back to tier 1 supplier, which is their direct suppliers. The next level is hardly, not Chicks. I understand the Chicks has a very good relationship with all their suppliers across the supply chain, but a lot of different brands, they did complain that they know only about their tier 1 suppliers. It's difficult to trace back all the way up to the source origin. And of course, we have different challenges. The finance side are talking about you need to disclose your non-financial data. What's it about? It's about carbon emissions. It's about all the good practices that you may have. So these are the industry challenges that we face with, and that leads to our thinking of we want to test whether blockchain can help solve the problems. And then this is the way I see it. We want the information to empower our consumers to make right decisions. And we want the information all the way back to the source material so that we can engage our consumers to help protect the environment, help protect the planet. And of course, our partners here are helping us out in terms of running this pilot test. And you can see that there are 3 players in the supply chain, from fabric mills, spinners, to garment manufacturers. And then we did a consumer survey last year already. We understand the basic attitude of consumer, where they like to receive this information. Actually, Hong Kong people still like shopping at the retail outlet, and then they want the retail shops to tell them about this sustainability information. However, at that survey, we also find one challenge is, I guess probably you know, they hire a lot of part-time sales associates. So the part-time sales associates need to remember a lot of different SKUs, different promotion items, and it's the last things that they will remember about which product, which collection is sustainable. So in that sense, on one hand, consumer running into the shops like to ask the sales associate, hey, can you recommend a sustainable product to me? But on the other hand, that sales associate probably will tell you that this will be the best thing because it's the promo item this week. So there's a gap there. And this year, we said that, okay, we want to carry forward and then see if we can really provide the information, how would consumer like to receive it? And here comes our survey this year. We run the survey together with Chicks, and then we have different channels. We have WWF channels, and we have also Chicks help out in terms of face-to-face, like having the survey at their stores, as well as having them promote it through their Facebook, social media to ask their customers to register or to complete the survey. And you can see that we also like to see a little bit of the profile of the respondents. We want to see how they perceive themselves, whether they perceive themselves as eco-friendliness or not. And then we map that out with whether they would like to receive more information. So you can see that it's more likely that people perceive themselves as more eco-friendly, would like to receive more information on sustainability. And then we give them 3 sets of data. You can see that we have kind of thinking, because right now in the market, the most available sustainability information will be like the brands disclosing their policy in their ESG reportings or in their websites. So the figure A is actually talking about, okay, if I push this information to a gadget for you consumers to receive it at a retail outlet, would you like to receive it like this? And then figure B will be like, oh, it's more data-driven, it's impact data, it's like carbon emissions of these products. So we ask them if you like both the figures to information to receive, or you choose only one. And you can see from the chart on the left-hand side, of course, the bar of taking both figures is high, but you can also see that if we really force them to choose either A or B, people choose B, which is the impact data. That means they're looking for really measurable, quantifiable impacts. This is the second set of data that we asked them about. When we talk about the story behind the products, if they only like to receive the general map, of which is all the way from source materials to which manufacturer. So the top one will be like a mapping of all the production factories around the world. And then the second one will be like providing more information. They may even be able to contact the individual production process facilities. They may, you can see a phone number, a social media contact there. So it's really well thought that consumer at the stores can call up the garment manufacturers and ask, hey, which workers is making this clothes for me? So you can see that people for this set of data, they really like to have both set of data. They like to have the journey map as well as the individual production process. And then the first set of data is, this is a little bit tricky. We want to say if the garment piece can provide a label, an overall performance label, just like an energy label. So I, as a consumer, then I can easily make a decision. If it's energy label 1, then it's most energy efficient. So if same goes for a garment, if you have a 1 overall index or performance scores, and then I will be guided that I can take the best garments that I have. Is the top one. And then the bottom one will be like, okay, the current supply chain are doing a lot of it already. They have different kind of certifications. And then we pull out all the certification for them to choose or for them to see. And you can see on the left-hand side that there is no significance among the, whether they like A or B or they like both. So this is a bit of information that we need to further clarify with the consumers. This is just a summary. And then I won't bother you with this small charts. I can share with you the PowerPoint later on. It's actually further analysis on what sort of profile of respondents will choose what kind of data. And this is the summary. In general, we see that the higher income people would like to receive more information. The respondents who are of elder ages also likes to receive both figures to receive more information. And then the female respondents are much easygoing, and then they don't think there's information that's not sufficient or unhelpful. And then the final one is about the respondents who perceive themselves as more eco-friendly, as well as they will read the labels when they normally shopping, and then this group of people would also like to receive more information.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
What I was always wondering, since you do statistics and you do some interviews of people, how do you see Hong Kong, or do you have any numbers, Hong Kong compared to surrounding countries or even Western countries in regards of sustainability? Because what my feeling is, it is developing, but it's not as quick as even in mainland China. In my perspective, like what I'm feeling, what people are telling me. Do you have any numbers in that perspective? Or?
Yes, we do. I would suggest you to refer back to the Fashion Summit last year. Actually, the Fashion Summit team commissioned KPMG to conduct a really big survey of 5 countries, or 5 cities, I would say, including Shanghai, Hong Kong, London, New York, and Tokyo. Yes, and then each of them have 1,000 samples. So it's a very, very objective research, and they laid down all the findings. So you can refer back to that research. The other research you may refer to is Fashion Revolutions. They also did a transparency research, and you can find that out from their website. Yeah. But ours is particularly on Hong Kong, because we are working with local brands, and then we're here in Hong Kong. We do want to understand a little bit more, because from this pilot, it's also all locally driven. So that's why for this survey, we focus on local Hong Kong shoppers. So this is the final thought. We asked respondents what sort of products or what sort of shops that you want to have this kind of information implemented. So the fast fashion one is outrage 74%, while the others product category are more or less the same. And then the final one is about how we display this. But this is, well, we can further explore. We're talking about whether we want to use a QR code or a barcode or whatsoever. But right now, just next door, we're displaying the Chicks garments using a barcode. And then when you scan that barcode, you can really trace back to all the layers of suppliers. So this is all I have, and then I'll pass the time. Any questions before I pass the time to Amit? If not, I'll pass the time to Amit so that he can share with you about the pilot, the full implementations, what's the top line learnings, and then after that we can have a discussion.
Thanks, Karen. I think I need to stand up, otherwise I'll fall asleep. How many of you know about blockchain that you could say confidently, look, I know what blockchain is about? So a handful in an audience of maybe close to 80 to 100. So this is a good starting point of what blockchain is about. So I'll first start with what is a blockchain, and then move on to actually the actual pilot that we did, which we just finished actually fresh out of the, let's say, the kitchen. And you're probably the first audience. We are sharing the results of the very first transactions that we did, starting from the fiber producer all the way to the brand. We also have an exhibition just next in the hall, so you could come and see how it works in practice. So let me start first with a blockchain. It has 3 distinct features, what makes this technology unique versus all other technologies that are out there from the digital perspective. The first and the most fundamental, if you ask me, it's at the very root, it's a database technology. It's actually a database, nothing else. But what's special about this database, it's immutable. Now, immutable is a strange word. You say, what does it mean? It essentially means that once you write something in that particular database, it cannot be erased. The reason it cannot be erased is because there's a lot of encryption done, so you have to de-encrypt to be able to overwrite, but also you have thousands of copies around. So you not only have to break into one copy, you have to break into thousands of copies. So it's practically impossible to actually overwrite what has been written. So that's the most unique thing about it's a database just like you use. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Excel sheet. Excel sheet is nothing but a database. Very simple. This is more advanced database where once you write something using blockchain, it cannot be altered. So that's one. The second unique thing about blockchain is the fact that it captures transactions that happens along the chain. Because it's connecting transactions to each other, it creates a natural chain of custody. It creates a natural audit trail. So it's a natural technology to use to connect supply chain transactions, because that's what it does. It connects transactions to each other. People sometimes also use ledger technology or distributed ledger. Ledger is nothing but like your P&L statement or your balance sheet. Input and output are all connected, and therefore you cannot alter around with that. The third, which I think is a conceptual breakthrough, which you can implement with or without blockchain, but the conceptual breakthrough came from blockchain. The idea being that you can take an asset and convert it into a digital twin, almost a mirror of the physical product on a digital platform by issuing tokens, by having a digital twin of the physical product. And as the physical product moves along the chain, the digital twin moves along on the digital platform. Now, what you will see, I have not yet talked anything about Bitcoins or cryptocurrency, right? So that has nothing to do, that is one application of blockchain, but I personally think in future, the biggest impact would come from supply chain, from having better compliance, from audit, and also in the finance around, trade finance, around remittances across the borders. That would be much bigger application than just pure cryptocurrency. Yeah. Now, let me start with another question. If I ask you what's common between these brands, and these are the brands that vary from high street fashion, or let's say more haute couture luxury brands like Burberry, to more mainstream Zara, H&M, but also athletic wear brands, but also sustainability champions like Ellen Fisher and Patagonia. What's common between these brands is they all have what I call a transparency paradox. And transparency paradox is the key challenge in the apparel supply chain right now. What is that paradox? The paradox is this, that most of the top 100 brands have very aggressively announced 100% sustainable fibers target in the next 3 to 5 years. 3 weeks ago, it was Inditex Group. A week before that was Ralph Lauren. Can you imagine? Ralph Lauren, which was always perceived a bit snobbish, a bit elitist, they are actually very aggressively going after sustainability and saying, look, we want to have 100% sustainable fibers in the next 3 to 5 years. Great. I think great initiative by the entire industry, very visionary, leading. But the challenge is, if you then ask the second question, how many of these brands can trace the garments back to the fiber origin? Less than 10. Less than 5% of the top 250 brands can track the garments back to the fibers. This also comes from Fashion Revolution, but also our own research when we look at it. Some people say even 10 is a high number. Actually, it's close to 0. If you consider all the garment collections, not just sustainable collections, but all the garment collections, there's hardly anyone who can trace it back to the origin across the entire chain. So that's the real challenge that we are trying to solve using blockchain and other advanced digital technologies to solve this paradox, that how do we provide transparency across the entire chain. Yeah? And most of the methods that are used right now are PDF file-based. You might be knowing transaction certificates, but look, this open to counterfeiting, it takes 1 minute to convert a PDF into a Word document, change the details, increase the expiry date by 1 year, add whatever volume you want to add, change it back to PDF file, done. And people are using those PDF files to say, look, I'm verified, I have organic cotton, I have organic wool, and whatsoever. PDF file-based method just doesn't work. And we need to be much, much better in terms of how do we create authentication across the chain. The supply chain transparency is also important because it creates real business risks. You might be aware of this example of Target, where they had a lawsuit right now in US because bedding sheets were sold with Egyptian cotton. It was figured out it was not. They had to recall product, refund consumers, and now even have a lawsuit. Amazon, among the 5 retailers in US, was fined millions by Federal Trade Commission, US regulator. Why? because they were selling so-called bamboo T-shirts. And what was those bamboo T-shirts? Nothing but viscose and rayon. Just because you use 10% of the pulp and combine with wood, the manufacturing process, it's still viscose and rayon. You can't call it bamboo T-shirts, right? So the point I'm trying to make is lack of transparency creates real business risk. So it's not just pure sustainability is, of course, very important, that it helps achieve sustainability targets, but it also helps to avoid real business risks for apparel brands. Yeah? Now, if you ask me which problems blockchain can solve in the apparel supply chain, I make a claim that there are only 2 problems that blockchain can potentially solve in the apparel supply chain. Not 5, not 10, but 2 and only 2 problems that blockchain can solve. First is the authentication of the finished product. You know, the worst nightmare for a Nike is having a fake Nike sneaker in the Nike store. The worst nightmare for a Chanel is a fake Chanel leather bag in Chanel store. So that's the first problem the blockchain can solve is authentication of the finished product. Once the product is finished, how do you ensure that fake copies are not ending up in the supply chain, right? And an estimate by European Union International Patent Office says about 10% of all the sales of apparel and fashion accessories in European Union is fake, because the way it's imported is actually fake copies, not of the brand itself. So that's the first problem. The second problem it can solve is the challenge of branded ingredient, which means you're making a claim at the point of sale that we use beautiful tensile fibers, or we use, like Chicks is saying, they're using tensile modal. So use sustainable fibers, and how do you make sure that it's actually true? Our estimate is up to 30% of all fibers that make this sustainability claim, organic fibers, recycled fibers, so on and so forth, are actually fake. And that's the second problem it can solve. I personally don't see any more problems it can meaningfully solve which are big enough. But if you do think there's another problem it can solve, then let's have a conversation after the presentation. Maybe we have another business opportunity to work together. Yeah, but those are the 2 key problems that we see it can solve. Now, what we are going to do is focus on that second problem I was talking about, is authentication of fibers across the entire value chain, organic or sustainable fibers. So this gives you a very simple snapshot of how our platform actually works. At the very source of origin of the fiber, we issue fiber coins. So this is the technology that we have patented. And the fiber coins is nothing but a digital representation of the physical fiber. So if today in the physical market, Lenzing ships 100 kgs of fiber to a spinner, 100 tensile coins would be issued to the spinner. And after the yield loss, he might actually get 97 coins, because there's 3% wastage factor converting a fiber to a yarn. And likewise, when it goes from spinner to fabric mill to dyeing house across the chain, the coins are passed along, and the only player who can issue coins is Lenzing when it physically ships the fiber, as an example of a fiber producer, and all other players can only transfer those coins. So that's what we did in this current example, where we had the modal fabrics or garments from Chicks, where we created the full authentication. That gives you a very high-level perspective of how it actually works through tokenization of the fiber at the source of origin and tracing it along the chain. The second point I want to highlight, we don't do a mass balancing. So a lot of approaches that you see right now in the market are mass balancing, which means you give credits. We don't believe in that approach, because you cannot authenticate at the level of article. So what we do here is we look at the fabric article, the garment item code. And that's exactly is the reason we can connect that garment article to the EAN or the barcode, and then have the app scan the barcode and then connect it to the entire supply chain. You cannot do that if you do a mass balancing approach or a credit-based system, which is quite prevalent. And we use a GS1 traceability framework, which is used very widely in the food and pharma industry. And you can imagine there it's a matter of life and death. One molecule goes here and there, suddenly you don't have a business. The company is gone. And that's the traceability framework we use from food and pharma for the first time to create in the textile industry a fiber to retail traceability data protocol. briefly, let me share the results of the pilot that we did in partnership with Lenzing, WWF, and Chicks. And I would like to just briefly share the key findings. And the reason we want to share is to highlight that we captured the sufficient complexity of the business, right? We were not taking one garment and then going and taking pictures at one place and then, okay, we map one garment, one article, and feel happy about it. Our whole purpose of the pilot was to make sure that we can take sufficiently complex scope and to be able to execute using blockchain, right? So what is that scope, what we did? We looked at almost close to 50, and it's approximately 50 because the precise number is 49, yeah? So it was 50 distinct garment articles that we looked at, so different colors, styles, or sizes for the Chicks collection. There was about 25,000 total pieces that were transacted on the TextileGenesis platform across the chain. All the transactions, very important, were done through a data upload facility. And I think the team here would, my colleagues would share later of the feedback from the supply chain, but everything was done through an extract from the platform and then upload to the platform. This is very important because it reduces manual errors, it improves ease of use, and very importantly, improves scalability, something that you can scale. The other important thing was, because the way it was done, you have, of course, have full transparency from origin of tensile modal fibers all the way to the Chicks brand and across the entire supply chain. And of course, the question comes, look, it's blockchain, no one understands. How long is the training time? How long does it take to train the people to use the platform? Now, I mean, I'm sure Jennifer will build on that later in her discussion, but it took about 2 weeks of training for the people to start using the platform, to understand the platform. Very important for us as a part of a design principle. If it takes months of training and people are still scratching their head, what the hell is going on, then of course, from user friendliness, it's not a good design. And that was a very important aspect for us. So just to give you the feel for the results, for example, just something that for a consumer is easier to understand. So this is one of the Chicks garments with 94% micromodal, 6% spandex. Scanning the barcode using our app, you would actually have the information about the product, the unique features about the product, and see the full supply chain. And what I would like to do is a video that we, again, hot out of the kitchen, we made a video today morning in this exhibition hall next door. So I'll click on the my TextileGenesis app now to then, is the video on? Yeah, okay. So then the app opens up. You can scan the barcode or you can manually enter the EAN number. So we scan the barcode. So this is the exhibition just on the right-hand side. If you go, we have garments hanging there with the actual barcodes, which is actually in the retail right now. So we scanned one of the garments. It's verified on the platform. And then you see the information about the product, the description of the garment, the composition, which is on the back end validated with fiber coins. The unique features about the garment that comes from the library of TextileGenesis that we built in collaboration with Lenzing, the tensile fibers, the spinner, the weaving mill, king tie, going all the way up to brand. Now we go deeper into the tensile fibers to see the certification they have, bio-based fibers, EU Eco label, and you could then even actually go and click on the tensile link to then actually takes you to the tensile website for a consumer who wants to understand even more about what tensile is about. And you can actually interact with this app just right next to the exhibition hall. But the whole data actually, of course, comes from the platform. Good. So let me take a pause. If there are any questions, happy to take now, or we can take it. Yeah.
Just a quick one. Since it's you're in the startup phase, I assume you just did the fabric, but or it was a simple T-shirt. And when it gets more complicated with trims, then you will integrate the trims at one part as well, or how is that?
Yes, yes. So in this case, it was a 45 different articles, and including the briefs and so on and so forth. But indeed, if there are multi-fabric garment, then those different articles will be part of the supply chain as well. There are 2 more projects we have started with a New York-based brand and one in Germany. And there we would be looking at potentially at multi-component fabric garments. So garments is multiple fabrics, not just one.
Yeah, just this example also was 94%.
Yeah.
And the 6% was not mentioned in the interface, was it?
No, it was there. So
It was there? Okay.
yeah. So it was 6% was like it was there in the description. But of course, we authenticate the fibers which are issuing the coins on the platform. So we don't authenticate whether it is now lycra or is it just spandex, right?
Yeah.
It's a spandex fiber.
I'm just asking this question because it's an ongoing discussion because it gets more complicated if you have more complicated designs. Now you have a simple T-shirt, and that's where we start. It's good, but then when you have the buttons and things change, and that's why also big discussion. Designers have to decide carefully what they take as the materials for making the product. So make it easier, make it simpler, and then also do know where all the trims come from, right?
But accessories, we don't deal with zippers or buttons. No, the accessories is not part of the scope, right? Because it's really the fabric and the fiber authentication, not that whether this button is from this particular guy.
But that's the question.
No.
Shouldn't it be the whole garment?
No, I mean, see, the zipper is directly coming from, so in YKK, let's take an example, Japanese top-end zipper manufacturer. That guy is directly delivering the zipper to the garment factory. There's no conversion happening in between. So what do you want to test, right? You have the manufacturer and you have the buyer at the garment factory. The problem of transparency, I mean, you could still do things, but the bigger problem of transparency comes when you talk with the chain, which is 5 steps or 6 steps in between, right? We are starting, as I said, that's our focus, to ensure that the fibers, which is now close to 100 million tons being produced, and increasingly the sustainable fibers, that's where we start, that's the focus, yeah.
And what about the dyeing?
As well, is part of the scope, of course, yes, yeah. Yes.
Hi, hello, I'm Liliana from Transparent Company. First of all, I understand how difficult this process is, and congratulations, and also for collaborating and in partnership. That's how things happen. Just one question: why GS1 barcode, and is that why you created an application, an app? Why not a QR code?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So almost all the companies have the barcode for just the scanning at the exit, at the checkout, just for the pricing and for the billing. What we didn't want to do was introduce another QR code that connects it to the blockchain, because logistically it's quite a bit of challenge, because they have to change their swing ticket printing, they have to change their digital systems, they may have to change their packaging. Sometimes in the packaging the barcode is there. So it's quite a bit of logistical and supply chain challenges and changes. And someone again needs to pay for those costs on top of what just using a new technology. So our whole design thinking from the beginning was, if we can connect it to the already existing retail barcode, which is anyhow there, system is there, then it would be more friendly and easier to use than introducing a new QR code. But that doesn't stop us. I mean, you can always, technology is flexible, we can introduce that in cases where it makes sense.
I agree. I agree. Just because in terms of user friendliness, I'm doing research in terms of physical and digital, and for consumers to download an app that is specific to a platform in a shop, it's also creating separation between the physical and the digital. So I just wonder why an QR code these days is so much easier. Yeah. But I totally understand the back end. It makes more sense for GS1.
Yeah. And I think one can, if they already have a barcode scanner, they may not have to download the app. So we're working on that aspect as well. Just because you have a scanner, you can just scan it, and it opens up a Safari page or a Firefox. Instead of showing that data inside the app, it will just connect to your browser and show that data. So I think that we can do as long as it can read the barcode. So they don't have to necessarily download an app, because you're right, it creates a distance. It creates additional hurdle, what's the network there. But everyone has a scanner, most of the people in their phone. Many times the scanner is actually part of the camera itself, right? So, those are the kind of things we're looking at to reduce the hurdle of viewing the information. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions from the floor? Okay. So if not, let's start our discussions. The first part of discussions that I would like to ask is about whenever we need to start a new project or a pilot, we need to line up collaboration partners. And then I want to hear from you that how difficult or how easy you line up your suppliers as your collaborative partners, what you need to know in order to convince them to join the pilot. And
For Chicks, we are quite lucky on this because throughout the years, this is what we concentrate on, our whole supply chain. So we always have a really good relationship with our suppliers. And then we know where our material is from as well. So what we had to do is really share the same value, talk to them about why we want to join this project. It's really about the consumers nowadays, they require a lot of information. They're talking about traceability and how do I do it as a brand with make sure that what I'm producing is what they're getting. So I was just talking about that, and I was talking about sustainability, our future, and talk about our core values of giving the best to the family. And they really share the same value. And we've been working with our suppliers for 8 to 10 years. So when we talk to them, I think it took only a week or two to get them on board. So they're really open-minded. They want to try out new things as well, just like us. So it was we are lucky that we have a really good merchant team that syncs with them. So I think within 2 weeks, we got them on board. Yeah.
For us, it's we mainly talk about brands and retailers, and we reach out to those together also with TextileGenesis. We are already connected with them because many of those are our customers. What is the most important is to create, okay, what is the value proposition? What are we going to tell them? And this is all has to do with what are the benefits that are in it for the whole value chain. And Amit was already addressing some of those benefits. But for us, what is really important is, like I said, it's all about transparency. But what are the benefits of getting this transparency? It really has to do with, first of all, you create at the consumer, you create more consumer loyalty, because many consumers, they are willing to pay for brands that provide them a higher sustainability and a higher degree of transparency. So this is very important. This is also the outcome of a recent MIT study, which really endorses this insight. Then secondly, it is also about protecting the brand premium. As Amit was saying, there's a lot of fake and counterfeiting, and this blockchain technology really allows to wash out the fake and the counterfeits, which is really in the interest of the whole value chain, but specifically the brand and the retailer who can then ensure, yes, this is really my product. It's not the worst nightmare like the Chanel fake bag in the Chanel store. Or sometimes you even have the fake Chanel bag in the fake Chanel store. That's even worse, I would say. But this is a second main benefit. And a third one, which is not being addressed yet, but I think that's also a benefit, is that this allows us to reach a higher degree of cost efficiency. Because what we typically see, for example, in our fibers, is that when we implement a fiber price increase, a fiber price increase of 10% leads sometimes to a garment or a fabric increase of 20 to 25%. And so it's like add on throughout the whole value chain. Whereas if you actually look at what should it be, what is the effect if you do the modeling, then it should, a price increase of the fiber of 10% should lead to a maximum 5% increase at fabric level, or 5 to 7%. So I think by using this technology, we also can have a higher cost efficiency. So that's for us a third. And with those elements together, that really helps us to convince brands and retailers. Having said that, it's still remains a job to be done, and it's not easy, but it really helps.
Anything to add?
No, I think it was very well captured by them. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Do you folks have any questions or any thought on if we really want to run a pilot, how are we going to involve our supply chain partners? Any anticipated difficulties that we can share? No. So if not, we'll move to the second sections of the discussions, which I would really like to hear the key learnings. Of course, Amit has already mentioned a few, but I do want to hear the very practical work that the suppliers is doing. Jennifer, you is helping out with the suppliers, how much time you have invested in this pilot, and then what are the key learnings, or do you hear back from the suppliers what are the challenges or any improvement areas that we can take on this?
I would say the whole process, the most time-consuming part is really on the training of how to use the platform. But for our 49 SKUs, actually our fabric mill supplier, they told us it only took them an hour to upload everything and then get it up and running. So it's really the platform is really easy to use, and then it's very easy to go on board. But the most important thing is actually the communication between brands, between each parties, because each parties will have their own language to, let's say the easiest thing, the color code. We use W100 as white, but another, let's say the spinner, they used 6,000. So it already doesn't talk to each other. So the chain has already broken. But with the previous communication, if we lay down all factors and then we just do everything the same, have the common factors, then this platform is super easy to use and quick to use. And then the best part is after the whole thing, as brand owners, we don't actually have to do anything. We just have to connect everyone, and then when like for example, Lenzing do the Fibercons distribute, and then the spinner, and then the fabric mill, and then the manufacturer, I just have to wait, and then the whole supply chain is out. And then there is a really good platform where you can see the whole world. You can trace back where things are from, how it's manufactured, and then how much transaction is done. So this part for us, the traceability is really good. What's the best part was this platform is connected to the end user as well. So this part is where you scan the barcode, and then this adds the transparency to the consumers. So which the whole process, it's done 3 months within, so I think it's quite an achievement. From lining up to the start to the finish. I think the key learning from the fabric mill told me that it's really the communication part, which is the most important. Other than that, it's really good. For the improvement, they are saying that, okay, this is, as just now that gentleman was saying, now it's just Lenzing, but what else? I'm a fabric mill supplier, I'm a manufacturer, I have more than just one fabric. How do we add those components? This is something that they cannot picture yet, but I know that Amit is working on it and then introduce more partners. So this is all about the collaboration of everyone. It's not just a brand, it's not, if one of the party doesn't work with us, the supply chain breaks. So I think it's a whole concerted effort together. So this is one of our fabric mill, Binchen, they told us about it and shared. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think Jennifer is in a better position to say what are the real experiences, because I think that's where also more complexity is. For us, I think one of the insights, it is a pilot. And one of the insights is that I think we had a very successful pilot because there was a strong collaboration between the partners. I think that's also a precondition. There must be a will throughout that value chain. But what I really liked is the ease of use and the ease of implementation of the whole platform. I mean, many people are a bit scared by blockchain technology, but then if you see how the platform works and it's so easy, it makes it very easy to implement, and also thanks to the agility of the team of TextileGenesis, where they needed to make adaptation, they did that very quickly on the spot almost. So I was really surprised by that speed.
Thanks, Harold. So I mean, just to build on that, so one of the stories to share to bring it to life. So I think it was just a couple of days before we were going live. I think Chicks had created an account on the platform. Lenzing had created an account on the platform. But somehow we were struggling with the Chinese supply chain to create an account on the platform. And then I was getting calls, we can't enter the city, we can't do this, we can't do that. And we were scratching our head because we really tested our platform on the browsers that have 99% market share globally, which is Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge. So we said, okay, this should work. So what's going on? Unfortunately, the browsers which have 99% market share globally have 1% market share in China. So they don't use any of those because they are banned or they don't work or whatever, right? So we had to then scramble, okay, what do you use? Oh, we are using 360 browser. Okay, interesting. We use Baidu browser. Okay, fine. So we have to really challenge the team within 2 days to download all these Chinese browsers actually and test the heck out of the platform that it actually works also on the local browsers in China. I mean, this is a very, very simple thing. We didn't anticipate it, just came at the last minute, and but we were able to overcome. Also, the language part becomes very important. So we have now in English. Beginning of next year, we'll launch it in Mandarin and Korean, because the language also becomes sometimes a hurdle. So there, Karen, I mean, we were having discussion how to train. Sometimes Chicks was very kind to do the training. I remember, Jennifer, you were the trainer in one of the calls. Then we had Venus from Lenzing and Sun who were doing training. So I mean, that collaboration that you could see, right? Because we didn't had at that point the Chinese-speaking people. So then Lenzing chipped in to be able to train on the platform. So I think those are the key aspects. Now I think on the supply chain side, it's clear the brand has a clear incentive to make this work. The fiber producer has a clear incentive. But the supply chain in between might push back. But then you have to ask the question, why are you pushing back, right? Is there something to hide? So don't always take the feedback from the supply chain at a face value, because some of these guys can actually even increase their margins by 10 to 15% through a little bit of creativity, around the material. So we have to be very, very careful why someone is saying what it is saying. But at the same time, from the platform, we have done as far we can go to actually make it easy in terms of to extract from your any ERP system upload. So no punching of the numbers on the platform. And what we're doing now is thinking through incentive schemes. So instead of a brand taking a stick and hammering the supply chain, you should join, or Lenzing saying, look, we won't supply you if you don't join, which is more a coercive, let's say, a stick approach. We're also looking at carrot, in the sense what incentives we could offer to part of the supply chain that they intrinsically are motivated to actually contribute to the transparency. As part of our standard, we don't ask any competitively sensitive or confidential data. So they have less fear that they reveal about their product features, about construction of the fabric, about the design and the color and the styles, because we don't ask that, and it's not relevant for traceability. Yeah.
I have here a question, probably Amit, you can answer. Can you state out any other brands or retailers have been using the TextileGenesis or similar digital tracking platforms?
Yeah, so I can't name, but we are working with a top designer label brand in New York. We'll be there in 2 weeks to kick off the project with them. And then we are starting with a German brand, which is very strong on sustainability. And maybe next week, there will be a press release when we make it open. So those are the two, let's say, that's more or less agreed. And on top of that, we're talking to the usual suspects, which are large mainstream brands, right? So I'm sure a few names come to your mind, and those names are the right names that comes to your mind. So, so all the mainstream large brands we are talking to right now. So we had a discussion today with a few of them, but nothing is final, so I don't want to name any of them.
Okay. Here comes a question for Jennifer. Which area and how many of your staff need to get involved into the transparency tracking platforms, and how long does it take for their training?
The training, actually, each training for each supplier, it's about an hour and a half, or an hour to an hour and a half. And then from our side, we have two main staff that is helping out because I'm not 100% in the know-how of the operation. So they are helping me on telling me, oh, actually, what's going on and how do I communicate with, like, how do I make it quicker? Like just now what I was saying is on the communication side, what kind of factors do we have to synchronize with each supplier? So actually it's two of our main staff. And then for our fabric supplier, only one of the staff is working on it. And then the others for garment factory, it's really one overseeing it and the other one really entering the data. Because the data that is needed is actually already in their system. So it's really about copying and pasting. So it's very easy to use. And as a brand owner, if we don't have to sit through the training, we actually don't need to do anything. But supplying, just watch and just talk to our supplier and then to sync everyone together.
Did the supplier call you up asking for help?
Yes, they did. It's because of the browser problem previously. But this is, if it's done in Hong Kong, I think it's so much smoother. It's just so happened that we're in that 1% of that arena.
Yes.
But yeah, but it's very easy.
I have another question here. How do you get around the rubbish in, rubbish out platform of physical assets recorded on a blockchain?
Yeah.
So I guess it's...
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. So essentially there's a very common phrase in technology called garbage in, garbage out, right? So then you have immutable BS sitting there that you can't even erase because it's on the blockchain. So I think that's something, a very important aspect that we looked at from data integrity perspective. So every single transaction on our platform is connected to an actual sales invoice and a purchase order. And any company needs to have a very good data on sales invoice and purchase order because that drives your cash flows. You know, if you don't know what you're buying, which is through purchase order, and what you're selling through sales invoice, I mean, the company will be out of business very soon. So every single transaction is linked to that, which gives a very high level of data integrity because we can easily verify the invoices on our platform versus what's in their ERP system. The second thing what we have done is almost you don't have to input any data. As we were discussing, you can extract data from the platform and upload. So that reduces significantly the manual errors which creep in if you have to feed data onto the platform. And more advanced version is what we call API integration, which we will do with Lenzing, where the moment a record is created in Lenzing's SAP system, automatically the transaction is sent. So there's not even extraction or upload. It's fully integrated. We understand we can do it only with large companies, but with smaller companies, we'll have to work with extract and upload. And on top, to ensure that there is no gaming the system, so to speak, we have introduced two new concepts. One is physical and digital audits. So even if someone says, look, I'm sending 50-50 Tencel cotton yarn or 50-50 Tencel cotton, knitted or woven fabric, there would be a sample selected from the supply chain picked up and verified in the Lenzing accredited labs whether it actually is indeed Tencel sent along with the coins. And the moment it's figured out that they were buying a generic product and sending with the coins, then their ranking on the platform will drop. So if you use any of the apps like Uber app or TripAdvisor whatsoever, every single player is ranked on the platform. Likewise in Airbnb. On our platform, every single supply chain player would have a transparency ranking. The moment through our data forensics, through digital and physical audits, we know that the quality is dropping, the ranking on the platform will drop. that gives an early signal to the brand to decide where to source the garments. But that also is a positive incentive to the guys who are actually authentic and do it in the right manner, because then they would have a higher ranking on the platform. So that transparency ranking becomes a positive feedback loop. And we've not yet seen that kind of innovation besides the fiber coins being used anywhere else, because that's based on AI and machine learning, where we do the ranking. And that module will be launched next year, beginning of next year. Yeah.
Then maybe just to memorize Amit about it, but there's also we also talk about the spot checks and the auditing, which
That's
also
right.
helps to verify the system.
Correct, exactly. Yeah, the one step down audits, and also the digital audits. If you know the sales invoice which are in our system, we can do a very simple every month, just scan of which are the invoices in your system versus our system. And then you can easily identify, okay, look, 5 invoices or 5 purchase orders are missing, because we connect it to that financial record, which almost all companies have a good hands-on. Yeah.
I have another questions here. Very often brands do want to go more sustainable, but cost has been one of the key challenge. How cost-friendly is the platform?
So can we have a discussion offline? So I mean, this was a pilot to actually show the proof of concept that it works. What I can say, it's a nominal cost. Yeah, it will not create a hole in your pocket. Yeah, as a brand or as a supply chain partner. So it's a very nominal cost that we charge from the supply chain partners and the brands. I think that's what I would say at this point in terms of the actual, and there's not much investment because it's a cloud platform. You don't have to ask your IT people to download and create firewalls and all kinds of stuff, because you can literally from one day to next can start using, right? Because it's a browser, you need to access the platform, create account, and that also helps us to lower the cost significantly versus creating these, the on-premise software here.
I would like to add 2 things to that, and one is what I already mentioned before, is that this technology also allows to reach for higher cost efficiency throughout the whole value chain, which is in the end of the brands as well, because they are able to control more the price. So yes, there is a cost of. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and I mean it's a company, it's always a business model. But there is also a cost efficiency opportunity there. And one thing else, we also have to look on the other side of the scale. What is really the cost of having fakes and counterfeits? Because that's really destroying brand value. And so that's also not in the interest of the end users. So I would say that
it's a very good point, because I think we immediately go into the cost. Maybe the better way to phrase that question, if I would phrase, is actually what's the business case, right? So what do you see the value creation versus the cost? And I think what Harold is just highlighting, and which is our assessment as well when we were discussing with Lenzing to start the pilot, we clearly see from Lenzing side and our side that the value creation part of the equation significantly outweighs the cost side of the equation. And that's exactly what we hope to see with the rest of the players in the supply chain as well. Also, the supply chain compliance costs can come down, because you don't need someone following these PDF files, punching the numbers, because for a brand, they just actually receive all the data at the end. Yeah.
I know that this is only a pilot and it's a proof of concept, but just wonder if you ever thought of how you're going to charge when it's really becoming mainstream or popular. Say, do you want to just work with the brands? The brands will give you a sum of money and then they can nominate their suppliers to be in, or are you going to, say, charge each actors across the supply chain? So any thought on that?
Yeah, so I think yes. So there we keep one annual subscription fees, a flat fees, for unlimited users and unlimited volume. So we don't want to charge based on number of transactions, which is where most of the platform works. We want to avoid that, because the whole incentive for a brand should be, once you have a flat annual subscription fees, then you just want to use as much as possible because the prices do not go up with the usage, right? So that's the model, what we do with the brands and part of the supply chain. Supply chain, we keep it very, very nominal. I'm talking about a couple of, thousand, that's it, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 USD. And so it's a fixed annual subscription fees. And then only on the fiber producer, there we are still in, I would say, a price discovery phase because that's where the coins are issued. Then there it will be linked to, up to certain volume, it's this price, and up to another volume, it's this price. But again, a price ladder based on the volume. All other players just fixed annual subscription fees, like any cloud platform, if you use.
And the questions here is, this is a good one. How long it will take this technology to becoming popular? And actually, it's our next section that I do want to ask, how are we going to, or in what way we can make this technology mainstreaming? What are the challenges? What are the things, 1, 2, 3, that we must do in order to get it right? Any thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think brands, they drive the whole process as well. So for example, if we have a goal, like for us, sustainability is part of it, and then traceability is part of it. And then that's why we are in this pilot project. So if other brands that has the same vision, same value, they will push us, like us. We will talk to our suppliers, we will talk to our garment manufacturers, the fabric mill, the spinning, and then to make this happen. I think how fast it will be, I'm not sure. It seems a long way, but it really depends on consumer as well, and also the brand owners, how fast and how many of them want to push this thing, because as previously said, it's all a concerted effort.
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer. There should be clear demand from the brands, and the brands should drive this. Nevertheless, I think also we as a fiber manufacturer also have a role, and I'm not only thinking then about Lenzing, because Lenzing, we do about 1 million tons of fiber, and that sounds a lot, and it is a lot, but if you look at it, at the entire market in textile, and Amit mentioned that it's 100 million tons, so we have 1%, and I think we should look at the overall industry objective to create transparency. If we have a 100% transparency on our fibers, yeah, it would be nice, but we would fail in the objective of what we're trying to achieve, because I really hope that more fiber manufacturers embark on this platform, and that we create transparency for the majority of the textile industry. Because if we and I don't want to go into numbers, but we should really look at a higher percentage, because then we really succeed in this project. And there are further goals which we haven't even talked about, but I really think if we can also go further down with the consumers to give more transparency to consumers, and also drive sustainability goals through this platform, which is possible, I think we can go much further than that.
Actually, here comes a follow-up questions that they said, do you agree that this technology will only deploy on high or to medium-end fiber or products?
I think, but there may be different opinions about that. I think it's very valuable for any non-generic fibers. So, and it doesn't have to be purely premium fibers. Yes, for us, we have an ingredient brand strategy, and we believe that we can achieve our goals also with TextileGenesis. But I think also for other fibers, the question is transparency important for other fiber manufacturers and for brands and retailers? And I mean, we don't have to discuss about the answer. So I think any other fiber can do that. It's just that, yeah, for generic fiber manufacturers like generic polyester, yeah, I guess they won't be willing to pay for it. But I don't see why other cotton US, wool, organic, recycled polyester, they could also embark on this.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. So I think any fiber which has a differentiated functionality, performance, or sustainability is an ideal candidate to be able to authenticate it across the entire supply chain. By definition, no one is trying to verify if you buy 100% cotton, okay, it is cotton, then there's no need for verification, because no one is calling polyester cotton or cotton polyester. Maybe there are some guys doing it, but this doesn't work because you know immediately from the touch and the feel. So it comes into play only when you have differentiated products where you want to have that transparency. But the interesting part is the entire market is moving towards that. So as I was saying, the majority of the top 100 brands have announced 100% sustainable fibers target. And for each of those sustainable fibers target, they have announced, okay, which fibers are classified as sustainable fiber, which will form part of that 100%. So Tencel is in it, Ecovero, organic cotton, organic wool, recycled polyester. So once that signpost has been set in the ground, right? Now the only question is how to reach there. And there are, let's say, existing legacy technologies being used to kind of achieve that target, which we were talking about, this transaction certificates based on PDF file? Or would you rather use a more advanced technology? And my sense is the way it would start, like in most innovation, it starts at the top of the pyramid, and then it builds scale, the cost becomes lower, more people join, and then, work its way down the pyramid. So we'll start first with probably with more, differentiated, unique products, more premium. We have Lenzing, we're starting now also with the wool, and then it will work its way down, for example, into organic cotton, recycled polyester, where you have those traditional certificates being used. But I'm sure people are looking at how do you digitize that whole process.
That's from a fiber strategy point of view, right? If I take Jennifer's analogy of Legos and build it up with, say, each of the actors across the value chains can put up their environmental data into it. Say, for instance, the carbon footprint, they can log on the blockchain, and then nicely I can see my whole supply chain's total carbon footprint is like, or the final product's carbon footprint is like. Is it possible, or?
No, I think it's very much possible. I think once you have the basic infrastructure ready, then you can add a lot of bells and whistles. You can add a lot of modules on top. So what we're building is almost like a highway or a digital infrastructure. And then there's a lot of interesting characteristics around the particular supply chain partner, or characteristic around the garments that can be very easily bolted on top of that basic infrastructure. So for example, the LCMP that you have initiated in the apparel industry, we can easily think about, for example, LCMP modules, right? Jennifer was mentioning in the brand module, you see the flow of the fiber to the spinning line, to the fabric that you see on the platform. And we know the shipping lines which are underlying those flows. So based on the shipping route, we can easily superimpose the typical emission factors, CO2s per kilometer of shipping route, to actually calculate those, upstream logistic emissions. The challenge again would come first, how do we ensure the quality of data that people are entering? Because this, you go to the production level data of their, electricity used or water being used, and then it creates additional effort. So immediately the supply chain would say, look, who is now paying for this additional effort if I have to do this in the supply chain? Yeah. So right now we're keeping it purely to traceability authentication, and then I'm sure we can easily then start expanding into other aspects. Yeah.
I think that would be also extremely interesting if we go into that. And you were mentioning this. If we would create a kind of energy label which is uniform for the whole fashion industry, this is definitely possible with this technology, and I think that could make it very interesting. if you think about, well, there was 2 years ago a report, a Dirty Fashion report. Maybe some of you know about it. It was published by Changing Markets. And they had also a follow-up, and they say, yeah, there are so many standards within the fashion industry that this is sustainable and this is sustainable, but that's also very obscure. I mean, which is the right standard? What is sustainable and what is not? Is recycled polyester, is that really sustainable, yes or no? And I think if we would be able to develop a uniform standard which is recognizable for all consumers, I think that would really help to create transparency at the far end of the value chain. And this is possible with this technology, because through different modeling and verification, we could add this kind of energy label. Still has to be developed, but I think that would, in my view, that is one of the second horizons of the whole technology.
Yeah, definitely. I think from a brand's point of view as well, like how do I track, if I want to move some, let's say, sustainability forward, I want to be a more sustainable brand, the carbon emission is part of something that we want to track. But I can't just go to the spinner and say, hey, can you give me figures? But if through this project, it can make this more happen. Like it can happen actually. And then I think it's more on the consumer as well. The consumer knows what's happening, and then they understand. Oh, if I buy this garment compared to the other one, they have a choice. But now it's more on a black box. So why would they have to buy our garment and not the other side? So I think, and also we all have a target to meet, but a lot of people don't know about it. I think if this really happens, it will be really good for both consumers, the brand, and every value chain.
I mean, Karen, you know everything about the science-based targets, right? And a lot of brands are now increasingly moving towards science-based targets, and there you have a scope 3 emissions besides scope 1 and 2. And if you don't have transparency, there's no way you can actually even think about scope 3 because you don't know where it's coming from. So to tackle the scope 3 emission, this is a starting point that can actually, that's one angle I could see, because that's a hook. There are commitments being made by brands around, their science-based targets, and this could help then kind of solve that challenge.
This is exactly why I asked, because this morning we talked about this UN Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Actions, and then collectively these signatories has committed to 30% reductions on scope 1, 2, and 3 by 2030. So I just wonder how they are going to measure this scope 3 emissions. It's so diverse, so we need to have an enabling technology to help that out.
Correct.
Talking about end consumers, here comes the questions. How many consumers scan the barcode, and how did it impact on their buying habits?
Because it's a pilot project, it's not out in the market. But today and the whole day, quite a lot of people are interested when they scan it in our little booth there. So it's still a pilot project.
I think that it is an interesting question, and what we see is that, and we've also done a large-scale survey, consumer survey, in 10 different countries with more than 5,000 people, and we found that and there was a question earlier, that there's between regions there's not so many differences. Actually, sustainability is a topic globally. And it's not just in certain countries, but you really see it. It's a global. Where there is a distinction is with age group, because we see that the younger age group is more into sustainability, and is I wouldn't say that older people are less into sustainability, but younger people are willing to, it's really one of their purchase drivers, and that's good, and that gives a lot of hope for the future. But I think that sustainability is really key for consumers, and it was also already brought forward in what you mentioned. And people want to know what is in this product, what is it made of, what are my clothes made of. They don't take it for granted that okay, it's this brand, so it's good. No, they want to know. So. My estimate is that in the future they will be looking more at labels like they do already in food, and they will be looking. But I think as an industry, and that comes back to the previous topic that I said, we have to develop a kind of uniform standard which makes it easy to compare for consumers, because today it's very obscure and very difficult to assess as a consumer what is good and what is not good. I would like to invite also people have a look at a campaign which we launched earlier this year. It's called Make It Feel Right, and that helps consumers create awareness what is good in terms of sustainable fibers and what is not good, or sustainable material at large. So this is, I think, the ultimate goal that we should drive.
We have a few minutes left, and then I heard about the success implementations of this pilot, and the follow-up question will be like, what's the next step? What's upcoming?
I think for next step for us, I think it's a very good part. It's a big step forward, and then we can tell, now we have a blueprint to tell other suppliers and say, hey, it's actually not that hard to implement this. I think with this, and then we can think about, as you guys mentioned about the wool pilot as well, we collaborate with different material suppliers and how we can make this happen with other materials.
For me, Horizon 1 is really the upscaling and making sure that there's more brands getting on board with this, and more also fiber manufacturers getting on board, so that we reach a certain scale, a critical mass. And Horizon number 2 is that we really go beyond that and see how we can drive sustainability and transparency further for consumers and for the entire industry with the use of this technology.
Yeah. So I think in the phase 1, I see for the wood-based fibers, where actually there's no standard, it's a complete white space, unlike what you see in organic cotton or recycled polyester or a responsible wool standard. The first thing is to create now a default technology and a standard in the wood-based fibers, so viscose, modal, and lyocell. That's phase 1, to actually ensure that we don't again have the same proliferation of things being used. And then phase 2 is to expand beyond the wood-based fibers, so starting with the wool pilot that Karen, you very kindly introduced, and we had a discussion. That's what we want to start as soon as possible. Then it goes beyond one class of fibers to multiple fibers, and that also makes the platform more flexible, more versatile to be able to use. And then the third is how can we then take some of these existing fibers which are being, where PDF files and transaction certificates are being used, how do we can introduce this technology, be it recycled polyester, be it organic cotton, be it on organic wool standard, and so on and so forth. So those are the 3 key aspects. And then, of course, the icing on the cake is, educating the consumers that they actually create the pull, and that, of course, then the brands would feel when the consumers start asking for it, start making those smart choices based on that. Yeah.
Any questions from the floor? No. If not, we have a very fruitful discussion today, and then I'm sure that we still have a lot to work on. Actually, there's clear path forward, but I just wonder which party to take up what kind of actions. Is it Amit that need to reach out to all the brands, different fiber producers, or is it Lenzing still will do a lot of push, or anything that WWF and NGO can help out? So I guess there's still a lot to work on. And then we also welcome your feedback after hearing about our pilot implementations. How's your feeling? Do you think it's the right technology to adopt? And do feedback, and then we can be making more informed decisions. Thank you so much for joining this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ho, and all speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the panel discussion Collaboration for Nature and People, a blockchain pilot case sharing section. We would like to extend our sincere thanks to all speakers, Professor Young and Ms. Ho, for being our moderator this afternoon. Thank you very much for participating in today's program. We hope you enjoyed the sections today. Kindly remember to return the SI headset at the counter. Lastly, to help us improve, we would appreciate if you could spare a few minutes and complete the survey on our event app or through our event helpers to tell us your opinion of the event. Thank you again for your participation today. Fashion Summit will resume its program tomorrow. See you tomorrow.